about us. Many things we don't solve, many things we don't love us. It in the be like highway.
All right. We will have Paolo soon. What's up, Alex?
How you been, comrade?
Good. Welcome to another episode, guys. We said that we were going to have Paolo on Sunday, but we were going to have him now. I apologize about the incorrect on my part.
Well, part of it also is that his time difference is not the same as ours. He's over in the West Coast usually. Nope. I believe he was in New York recently. Had plans to go to Cuba. I don't know if he was in New York. I don't know if he made it to Atlanta to the Uhuru thing there, but I think he was in New York for something Latin American related. Definitely want to talk to him about that. I don't know if he was in Peru recently as well. I want to hear about his travels because he lives in California, but he went to New York for something. Did you hear about that?
No, I did not. I do know that Claude was there, so I wonder if that was like a similar.
Well, I think her name's pronounced Clau, which is short for Claudia. Yeah, Clau.
Mm-hmm. Clau.
Yeah. In Spanish, it's pronounced Clau, which is short for Claudia, which is pronounced Claudia in Spanish.
Wait, I'm just making sure I gave him the correct link. Hold on. I'm pretty sure I did. Hold on.
Yeah, they might have made it up there because I know Clau is based in New York. What are you eating? Pistachios?
Oh, pizza. Oh God, I had myself in there.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Anyway. There's your twin. There's your twin. Yeah, what are you eating right now?
I just finished my pizza.
Oh, okay. I can't eat pizza, man. I got a diet. You know, I lost 35 pounds past couple months, right?
Yeah, congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a whole nother diet and everything. That's why we had to do a new picture for the promo. I know we're gonna have another promo. You could use the same pictures last time, man, with those gray shades, because you could see, you could tell in that one the weight difference. I got a new look going on. Still got the sideburns though, despite of Malay, right? Despite of Malay, yeah.
All right, here he is. We got our Peruvian comrade here.
I like the beret. How you been, comrade?
Welcome back to Jabari Media, brother.
Hi. Good evening. How are you two doing?
Very good.
It's been a long time.
Yes, it's good to see you again, man.
I'd say about a year. We've definitely spoken to comrades of yours since then, but good to have you back on.
Yes, well, it's been a lot has been happening under this dystopia, and I'm grateful that my compas were able to contribute onto your show as it's been growing, and to talk about the Peru, other contexts in Latin America and the Caribbean. The situation is very much developing as the U.S. imperialism is encroaching, and even Israeli Zionist colonialism in South America, we're seeing.
The very first country that the new president of Colombia visited was Israel. That's no coincidence. And also, Netanyahu was the one that paid Trump to pardon Hernandez out of Honduras. Wow. So Israel's been doing a lot of meddling in the region lately in Latin America, both in Central and South.
Yes. Yeah.
So Malay is attached to the Zionists as well. We know that.
So yes, where do we want to start off in terms of questioning?
Well, I'm not really well versed in the Bolivian situation as I am in the Peruvian situation. So maybe you could update us on what's going on in Bolivia. Last we heard, there was an international, I don't know if an international arrest warrant, but an arrest warrant made by the Bolivian regime, by the Paz regime, probably with U.S. backing, against Evo Morales. And part of that, I heard there was like 150, I don't know if they were rangers or advisors, like U.S. forces, that they're trying to plan a Maduro-style kidnapping. They lost the element of surprise, right? Because the original plans, they had a leaker that revealed that, and he's under armed guard. His people are guarding him, Evo Morales. But what are the odds that they're actually going to get him, and why are they doing this at this time? He's not even in power anymore, right? Because they consider him that much of a threat.
Well, it's the same thing for Christina Kirchner. She's no longer in power, but she's been prosecuted, lawfare and such, and she's remaining in prison right now, just like Pedro Castillo. This is something that we should not take it for granted, but we should learn from these.
Hold on. I have to interrupt you because I'm confused by something. I thought under Argentine law, somebody who's not 70 years or older could be in prison. Do you mean she's in house arrest?
Yes, which basically is the same thing. You're not allowed to do any.
Bolsonaro's in house arrest as well. But I was unaware that Christine actually got house arrest. I thought she beat the charges on appeal or something. So that's too bad. I didn't know that was going on in Argentina as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but my point is that this situation is an example of how the ultra-right behaves all the time. They are not forgiving, unlike the left. And for us on the political left, globally, we cannot forgive our enemies neither. We have to go through the process of justice, just like there was for Jair Bolsonaro. And that's how he was, imprisoned. He was a genocidal president.
Don't you think the Brazilian democratic institutions are stronger than the U.S.? Because literally Bolsonaro's son learned from Trump how to copy January 6th. They did the same exact thing in Brasilia. This was after January 6th, so they were copying what happened in Washington. So for that act, once Bolsonaro stood down, the Brazilian authorities, based on their institutions of law, actually arrested him, unlike what happened in the U.S. with Trump. And now he's in house arrest. They actually put him in a jail at first, but for health reasons, they have him in house arrest, but he's restricted. Doesn't that demonstrate that Brazilian democracy is stronger than the U.S.? They actually held somebody accountable that was a Trump-like figure?
Yeah, perhaps so. But I'm not well versed in Brazilian law, but I know that there were meddling in the judicial process, for the Lava Jato coup, that scandal that Lula da Silva was imprisoned for, because of the CIA under Barack Obama's tenure. He was in prison, and then that gave rise to Jair Bolsonaro after Dilma Rousseff's presidency. So there's some weaknesses in Brazil's politics. There's a lot of Zionists, there's a lot of Bolsonaristas still, and that's what we're concerned of with the very critical election, and which we had two already in Peru first, and then Colombia.
Right.
And now we know how these results are trending towards. But so Bolsonaro's son is the coup plotter, and he's involved, and he's associated with the Trump.
He's going to run, I heard, as president. Yeah.
Yes, he is. He's a candidate of the Liberal Party, Jair Bolsonaro's party. Yes.
Well, liberal means something different in Latin America than it does in the U.S. Yeah.
Kind of like how the Democratic Party is in Poland is different as well from.
Well, also, if you're a Republican in Spain, you're a leftist, or at least a progressive. Yeah. So different terms mean different things depending on the regions and their history, their geopolitics.
Yes, the Republic means something much truer for the Spanish people, where, of course, they fought in that civil war against Francisco Franco. They formed their republic and have their own flag. It's people with a purple stripe. But anywho, but yeah, going back to Evo Morales, this point is that they're going to keep going after the left, imprison them if they can, just like for Pedro Castillo, just like for Nicolas Maduro. I mean, they've kidnapped other presidents before, like in Haiti, Aristide.
Yeah, Aristide, they sent him to Africa. And he was an archbishop, a progressive Catholic, part of the liberation theology.
Yes. And so, and despite of his compromising with previous U.S. governments,
that was
he was
betrayed him and had him couped. I think twice. There was 2 coups d'états.
Yes.
The second one, they sent him to Africa. I forget which country, but it was an African country that was cooperating with the United States on that.
Yes. And so that's what's concerning. I mean, just yesterday I was at an action. Yesterday being the August 9th, the International Day of Indigenous Peoples of the World. I was speaking. No, I'm not in New York.
Okay, but we were just talking before you came on that we believe you were in New York recently, correct?
Back in March. I can touch on that later. But,
okay.
Particularly on this, I was at an action with the FRSO, CSO, the Community Service Organization, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, and some other organizations joining with us. I was leading with the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa, Fight Back Coalition, representing the Latin American Committee, their stance, talking about Haiti's history. I mean, right now they're facing a situation with the suspension of the TPS protections, and it's just temporary. Of course, that's what the T stands for. But we need to go beyond just defending that TPS, but alleviating the situation back at home by removing these UN foot soldiers for colonizers and the core group, which includes Brazil, the US, Canada, France, Germany, a lot more European Union nations, and some OAS organization, American states members.
We had UN officials in Haiti getting caught for having sex with women in exchange for food and favors or whatever. Like, there were so many abuses that were going on there.
Yeah, and Brazil was also, because Brazil was occupying a part of the occupying force of Haiti. Well. So they were part of some scrupulous things, man. And honestly, that's one of the critiques with Lula as well, because he was a part of that.
His biggest mistake is what he did in the BRICS meeting in Moscow. He didn't even have the decency to show up to do it. He sent Dilma, but not vetoing Venezuela from entering as an associate of BRICS was a big mistake.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Anything that is not working towards building a multipolar world, it's allowing the U.S. to get its foothold once again, which has now reached to this point in 2026, with the second year of Donald Trump's presidency. And I'm very much concerned with that. I earlier in the Trump's administration, when I came back from Peru and Bolivia and El Salvador, I was traveling during the time period of the transition of Joe Biden and Donald Trump's presidency. And now we're seeing what I was very much concerned of. I was telling people, organizers and activists about to pay attention to the Latin American presidential elections, because it's a very delicate situation. And my last trip was in August in Bolivia during the bicentenario, the 200th year anniversary of their independence, and they were having an election period. I was in Colombia at the time too, so this is when we saw a lot of political divisions within the left, but also the rise of the old right and the new right-wing figures. The new one being, one of the being the Rodrigo Paz, born in Spain. If you look on his Wikipedia page, you'll find a picture of him with a younger version of him with George H.W. Bush, not the junior one, but the older one. That's how long he's been
George
in the scene. Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
And he was not only vice president and president, he was head of the CIA.
Yep.
Yes.
He was a very deep state.
And he was in Dallas when
very
Kennedy was
dangerous.
killed. Go figured, huh? He was in Dallas when Kennedy was killed. Yeah.
No, of course. Why would he not be?
I didn't know that.
There's pictures of him in Dallas that day. He was working for the CIA. This is before he became head of the CIA. He was younger, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Something I want to touch on is actually regarding the Uhuru 3 case, as it relates to the African people's struggle internationally. Yeah. So on July 22nd, this is the same day that Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores were having the third hearing, in New York, but taking place in Atlanta, Georgia. The Uhuru 3 case was making its way towards an appeal to their mixed verdict, to going back to what this was stemming from was a July 29th raid in 2022, when the FBI under Joe Biden's presidency raided the leadership of the Uhuru movement, all their offices, taking a lot of metadata too, to collect what they can find, that would be, Russia collusion, as they've always been looking for under the Democrats. Right now, it's the Republicans. They're looking for Cuban collusion, as what we're seeing with the.
Well, they're blaming people like Medea Benjamin, who's no agent of Fidel Castro. She actually lived in Cuba. Her daughter's from Cuba, and she was expelled by Fidel because she wrote an article critical of the government. Now, when Fidel caught up with her later and was made aware of all her anti-sanctions activism that's separate from the socialist government that she did on her own, he actually apologized to her. But, she never worked for the Cuban government. She was even at one point considered an enemy of the Cuban government. And to say that she's a Cuban agent or a Chinese agent or whatever is just, she's one of the founders of Code Pink. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I actually heard live what you're describing, the Atlanta appeal. And the judge asked stupid questions. He sounded very biased. I don't believe the decision is still pending. So, but it didn't sound like it's going to be in their favor. I'm cautiously optimistic. And not only that, he actually confused the attorney for the guy from that cult that left Uhuru, who's the fourth defendant. He confused, I think it was Goodman, with being his attorney. He said, "Excuse me, I'm not the attorney for him. I'm the attorney for the Uhuru 3." So the judge was so ignorant, he didn't even know what attorney was representing what.
Right. Well, I do have more updates regarding that case. It's that these three judges that were presiding this appeal, they are not moving forward with this, and so the Houthi are taking it to the Supreme Court level.
Not surprised.
But I'm pretty concerned about the representation in the justices with these Trump-appointed. A majority of them are Trump-appointed. But we'll see. We'll see if they are going to be.
2022 was Biden. This is a Biden regime case. Yes. So you think Trump, who's in some ways trying to reconcile Russia, trying to show he's different than Biden? I mean, it was like when Biden showed he was different than Trump by letting Alexr return to Venezuela, right? That was one of the things he did. And also the Assange case, that was first brought by Trump. Who ultimately freed Assange and let him return to Australia was Biden. So maybe there will be some differences in Washington under the current regime, where Trump will realize this is a Biden-led case and that it's just Russiagate. And then, those Supreme Court justices that were appointed by him, who are the majority, appointed by Republicans, will sway in the right way. Who knows?
I don't think this is going to be a real motivation to push him. Push these Trump-aligned people to do so. I mean, the Republicans are still, as bet on Russia as the Democrats. I mean, the Lindsey Graham Act that Trump signed, right? It's to put more sanctions onto Russia, and in the midst of this proxy war.
The more Tucker Carlson type Republicans that are putting pressure on the U.S. to stop supporting Ukraine, and there's some influence there, you could say.
Yeah, but overall, the work that they're doing is still needed in terms of fundraising, I mean, check out the Burning Spear YouTube channel and their website, theburningspear.com, for the articles talking about it. I've contributed to some interviews there, and as talking about Latin America, but also providing our solidarity with the case, with their leadership. I was in St. Louis, Missouri, meeting with the chairman and the three back in April. They were having their international plenary
of this year, right?
Yes, this year. Yes, it was a really wonderful show of our forces coming together. I mean, there's a lot more abroad, but this was much needed to show how unified our stance is. I mean, the main message was about not just Trump, but the whole damn system, where this political system needs to go. Of course, the colonial mode of production needs to go. I mean, people in the Democrat side, I mean, they're part of the colonial class too. On the other hand, it's the Republicans. And the Democrats want to preserve this system and only do minor reforms, of course. And then No King's protests that are bringing people out there into the streets are not bringing people into organizing. The chairman is saying that we need to go beyond just protesting. He said that back when Nicolas Maduro was kidnapped in this raid.
Well, that's why I never attended a No King's protest. I go to independent protests that are against ICE, stuff like that occasionally. But when I had opportunities to go to the No King protest, I don't want to go to that. It's just a Democrat front.
Yeah. But
and
I mean,
I'm going to give a shout out to Burning Spear, by the way. David Hundea has been on this show. It was a great episode. It was one of the highest viewed episodes ever in Jabari media history as well, too. So definitely check that out. That interview. Shouts out to the Burning Spear. Sorry about that.
Yes, no worries. Yeah. And the protests are
for them, and I support them 100%. They should continue to expose what's going on.
Yes. And the protests have their place, but the party it's saying that we need to go beyond just protesting. These concerns that we've been living through, the genocide of Palestine. I mean, I've been protesting practically every day, every week, throughout 2023 and 2024, and 2025. This is when it was plummeting our capacity to get back out there. People are not even out in the streets to mobilize big for Maduro's freedom. I mean, it was completely everything that the U.S. is doing, is violating international law, and people are not protesting. But I mean, there's other ways that we need to engage people politically
to free Alex Saab, not just Maduro, because I see as Alex Saab is encompassing the real legacy of Maduro, and he was betrayed and sent to the U.S. empire. Not trying to cause any division, but certainly we should continue to appeal for his freedom in Miami as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then I think that's all I can say about the case. Is just one more thing about just pay attention to the Burning Sphere, as we're going to have webinars about. We've had debriefing. We're going to have more updates to this case as it's going to proceed to the Supreme Court, because it's a fight back for all of our political rights to freedom of speech, and particularly anti-colonial messaging. Go ahead.
It just it's insult to the intelligence to say that the long history of Uhuru opposing, NATO, even before this Russian gentleman was born, like it just goes against all logic. And like you had lawyers that were seriously arguing between three judges. And one of the judges, like I said earlier, did not seem fair or even aware who was representing who. But they're seriously saying that they're under the command and control of Russia. It's like they didn't convict them of being, spies. They're just not failing to report being a foreign agency. What about AIPAC? Uhuru is not an agency for anybody. They're Americans. They're internationalists, but it's just completely absurd. And then what about AIPAC? They didn't. You look at the double standards, right? That they virtually control the House and the Senate. I mean, they just passed a bill in the Congress to merge the CIA with the Mossad, to give no sovereignty whatsoever to a nation that has betrayed us, to a nation that's attacked the USS Liberty, to a nation that has stole our nuclear secrets, and then Trump pardoned Polak for it and let him return to Israel, and then he meets with our ambassador in Israel, meeting with traitors, and then they want to make the treason official, so then we have no sovereignty anymore. They barely stopped it in the Senate. It came very close, which shows the extreme influence of AIPAC. And part of the reason why it was stopped is, I hate to say it, but it's true. I'm a leftist, but it's true that people on the right, libertarians like Tucker Carlson, Mary Taylor Greene, they're coming out and they're saying this is a treason. We need Nuremberg trials against the Republicans in the Congress who voted for this. After saying that, it got stopped in the Senate because Republicans started getting scared. But you have to talk tough like that to these politicians that are selling out to Israel. That's the only way you can put a stop to things like this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any more questions, Jamar?
Yeah, I got one. So we kept tabs. We talked about Bolivia. I just want to make sure we keep everything safe. Let me get out my notes. Sorry if I look like I was looking at something else. We're about to release a story on a cop getting his job reinstated in Connecticut with my party. So I was just looking at the final notes on that. We
you muted yourself.
Okay, so when it comes to Venezuela, this is one of the questions I would love to hear your perspective on. Venezuela has been getting criticized out the yayo lately, even to the point where we heard from Foreign Minister Abbas that Iran is not going to be the next Venezuela, is what I paraphrase of what he said. It's not the exact quote, but it's a paraphrasation of what he said. What do you feel about Venezuela now under Delcy Rodriguez's pressured leadership with the United States? What is your feeling on that?
Yeah, well, I've been meeting and discussing, asking the same questions about if Delcy Rodriguez, the leadership, is compromised in Venezuela. They're not defending Alex Saab's situation where they granted the U.S. to do all this. First by rescinding his Venezuelan nationality, and so he only has a Colombian passport, and then he's deported from Venezuela to Miami, Florida. So that's one example, and another is having Israel present for the earthquake relief effort. And Israel has their means of the reasons of why they're doing this as well, to put a positive outlook to their military, of course, of which we know it to be a genocidal entity. The U.S. were there with the troops on the ground too. They send their troops for anything when it comes to humanitarian aid or when they're killing civilians abroad, and we see no difference.
Right.
And so we're somewhat concerned about what's going to happen with the elections. They happen for next year, along with Nicaragua's presidential elections next year, I believe. This is all. Yeah. Go ahead.
What are your thoughts on what could happen with Nicaragua? Because we heard from Ortega, which I agree with. But what do you think could happen?
Well, there was a lot of misinterpretation by the international legacy media and by Marco Rubio putting a statement out there. This is putting Nicaragua on the radar for a military invasion, perhaps, or a adding more to sanctions. Right now, there are more. Here's the factor when it comes to U.S. politics. There's the diaspora that functions as the lobbying arm. You have the Israeli, with AIPAC. You have the Iranians and the diaspora in the U.S. I have on my side here on the West Coast a lot more. You have the Cuban Gusanos, you have the Venezuelan diaspora, represented supposedly by Maria Corina Machado. And for the Nicaraguans, they don't have a central leader, but they have, ex Sandinistas. They have, Nicaraguan exiles that, of course, they disagree with the government, but they've taken it. They took it to a far whole new level by launching an insurrection in 2018, right. And where the volunteer forces of the police in Nicaragua were murdered. They were burnt alive, even. This was a similar scene with in Venezuela. I mean, the Venezuelan reactionaries who now live abroad and claim that it's a dictatorship in Venezuela when Maduro was in power.
They tried to kill Abby Martin. That was
but
Maria Machado is not going to run next year, is she? Because hasn't she been banned from running?
I don't know about that, but if she's going to be able to run. But my point was that these Venezuelan reactionaries, for example, is back in their homeland when they were living there, they were much more of the type of white colonizing population, like in the U.S., lynching Africans, descendant of Venezuelans. They when they interacted with Africans defending Venezuela's kidnapped president Maduro and Flores in New York, they were saying the N-word. They were raising the Donald Trump flag with the king.
We had some of those same people using racial slurs as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were calling them monkeys, all that stuff.
Well, not only that, there's a famous Venezuelan singer who was actually charged with pedophilia in Venezuela before he escaped to Spain, where he had his musical career, named Carlos Baute. He's known for doing a song with the equivalent of the Madonna of Spain, Marta Sanchez, like 15 years ago or something, around the time I lived in Spain. But Carlos Baute gave a speech in Spain to Venezuelan exiles and called Delcy Rodriguez, despite her having cooperated with the United States, as mentioned, La Mona, which means the female monkey. I mean, these are the people that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Going back to this issue with Nicaragua, how the U.S. may get involved. I don't think right now, not this year. The Nicaraguan diaspora is very minimal, but yes, with Cuba, with many fronts, like especially in Iran. Yeah. But the aspect about that, I was talking about the lobbying arm with these vendepatrias abroad.
Right.
The Nicaraguans are not really, unified. They don't have a central leader like the clown Shaw, and the Maria Corina Machado. So they function still abroad in the UN, putting human rights statements of advocating for human rights supposedly in Nicaragua, demonizing the government right now from abroad. I mean, they get to yap all they want to abroad, but when they are in the homeland, I mean, they're that type of dissent is squashed because, as I mentioned about Venezuela, I mean, they're and what they did in 2018 in Nicaragua across the country, they functioned as the new Contras by being the counter-revolutionaries and being spies for the U.S. Just like when we have seen in the past, protests in Cuba against the government, that is supported by the U.S. This is also
all Ortega really said. Tell me if I'm wrong, Paolo. All Ortega really said in regards to new elections in Nicaragua was, and in case people didn't know, I also mentioned the misquote, but all he said was, those who are advocating for a foreign invasion of our country will not be permitted to run. Something similar to happen with Machado. Of course, people like Narco Rubio was saying, he was saying there will be no elections in Nicaragua. But wasn't it more along the lines of what I just stated? Essentially,
it is like that, where the anti-imperialist left governments are pushing back against any form of counterinsurgency in their own territory, in their own sovereign right to defend their homelands. And when we look at that in context of the U.S. and doing that to us as dissidents, as political activists, organizers, talking about the truth about the war crimes against humanity, the history, the legacy of colonialism in the U.S. and such.
Right.
We're all silenced. We're all shadow banned and even now put into prison or on a terrorist watch list. Domestic terrorism. Yeah. That's how they function the same way. But when the anti-imperialist left do it, those countries are demonized as a whole dictatorship, and it's time to overthrow, do a regime change. And so that's the ironic bit. It's always been like that. Even when Biden was in power with the situation with Iran, they were fomenting a color revolution. But when there's a revolution that happens in the U.S., they're going to quash it heavily. I'm sure that we all have been at the front lines with that in our respective parts of the U.S. This is how they react when it comes to them, pouring money and training people to become, sleeper cells in Iran, and along with the help of the CIA and the Mossad and MI6, they're all functioning that way in former Soviet countries, in other places around the world, in Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
Like in China, right? Let's go to China real quick. That you have all these people that are so worried about the so-called Uyghur genocide. It's one of the most prosperous regions in China. As a matter of fact, the two-child policy now doesn't even apply to minorities. The Uyghurs can have as many kids as they want. So in some ways, they have more rights than Han Chinese, who are the majority of the population. So this incredibly prosperous area where they're able to practice Islam in their culture, they're saying there's a genocide. Isn't it funny, though, that the same people that are insisting that Chinese are genociding these people deny the genocide in Gaza?
Exactly. And, the political reason of why they're claiming that there's a genocide in China against Uyghurs is that because they're using Uyghurs as a separatist-backed group to overthrow that region, to arm and to become more radically fundamentalist in their religious practices. Just like there are, terrorist groups that the U.S. have previously funded and armed and trained through the CIA, such as the Mujahideen.
A picture of so-called political prisoners from the Uyghur area that are being oppressed or whatever. It's always the same picture from like 30 years ago. And those were terrorists that were rounded up, that were paid by the CIA to do these acts. It's like, it's just so pathetic. They have no leg to stand on. And it's always the people that are concerned about the Uyghur genocide that will deny that Israel's committing genocide in Gaza. It's a complete double standard.
Yeah. I mean, the whole double standard is that when we look at the Western Hemisphere, we don't even need to go that far. We have the concentration camps here that are run by for-profit prisons for ICE to human traffic migrants, but also El Salvador. Last year the U.S. Under Trump, they were thinking of agreeing to sending the U.S. citizens to their dissidents to El Salvador. This is all
openly talked about it.
Yes. This is all. Very, very concerning. How even now we're having this executive order to partially amend on the birth citizenship right that is already granted in the Constitution.
They're saying that anybody who's Antifa is a terrorist. So if you're just opposing fascism, that's all it means. You're opposing fascism. It means you're a terrorist now, according to Trump. That's how pro-fascist he is.
Yeah. And for Bukeleismo, or the Bukelization, we're seeing that rapidly throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. But it did not even really stem from his governments. These right-wing governments are learning from the U.S. And of course Israel. That's why they back them both to the fullest. so they could perpetrate the same level of crimes as their previous counterparts. I'm not talking about the U.S. and Israel alone, but the civic military dictatorships, the military juntas of the 20th century, and under Operation Condor, we're in that legacy right now in 2.0. We're in. It's already described as the Domino Doctrine.
Post-Condor years, I'm talking about 1980s, right? Because Condor years was primarily in the 70s, late 60s into the 70s, right? You could say it started in 1967 after they assassinated Che in Bolivia. But in particular, if you look at Argentina and Brazil, they pardoned a lot of their war criminals that participated in the dictatorships and the juntas during the horrific Condor years. They pardoned these guys, and what was the result? The result was people like Bolsonaro emerged, and Bolsonaro built his political career on advocating for Dilma to be tortured once again, because Dilma Rousseff, who took over after Lula, was between both governments. When Bolsonaro ran against her, he said, "You need to be tortured again," and got away with it, and they got elected later on because they were not tough on the people that participated in those atrocities. It's very similar to the American Civil War, because Reconstruction was a failure. The paramilitary forces were permitted to rise up, the KKK. That's why mass migrations of former slaves went to the north. Because that's where they could find jobs, and they were discriminated against, they were persecuted. Had they come down hard on the Confederate traitors, had they invested in Reconstruction, it's also similar to the war reparations that they unfairly made Germany pay to help the rise of Hitler. So when there's a war, you have to have a combination of, when a war's ended, investment in rebuilding of a society that was defeated, and also going after the leaders that led that society and being tough on them. Even after World War II, the Nuremberg trials, a few Nazis were hanged, but a lot of them were recruited by the CIA. Some of them were sent to South America. So if you're not tough on the defeated fascists, if you become the new fascists, the new empire, like the U.S. I mean, the U.S. is like a combination now between British Empire and Nazi Germany. It's got the worst traits of both. If people are not held to accountable in wars, and also you always have to talk about the Condor years in the context of it not being possible without CIA backing, without U.S. political and military backing. The U.S. not only permitted, they helped foment these coups, this turn back against progressive Catholics, progressive socialists, whatever, that were trying to advocate for the majority of the population, for the indigenous people. Peru had a military leftist government under Velasco in the 70s. It was one of the few governments in the region that wasn't full-on fascist. But again, it wasn't people voting in fascists like you see sometimes happening now, right? Lately happening now. It was military coups against the will of the people. And so many people on the left were rounded up and killed. And there was a lot of lack of justice. Yeah, some people were held accountable in Chile, not as much as they should have. But again, in Argentina and Brazil, a lot of these guys were pardoned. And these were war criminals. They were working with literal Nazis to try to prevent the spread of socialism revolution, like Che was trying to do in 1966, 1967. So,
yeah.
Well, go ahead. Sure.
No, go ahead.
On the point of fascism, I mean, we're not talking about this aspect only in the human history of colonial, oppression overall, and it's imperialist, it's capitalist, but primarily colonial. When the settlers that came throughout in the Americas, even in Argentina, this year being the 50th anniversary of the civic military junta coup, the indigenous population that is still survived to this day are still demanding the need for reparations, the fight for their sovereignty, their own self-determination to live in peace and with dignity. But their struggles overlooked
in Argentina.
Yes, and both in Chile too, because in these regions right now they're colonially oppressed, and their land is being taken away, stolen from them.
Chile now, right? He's the son of one of the Nazis that was sent down there to back up Pinochet. I mean, literally. And he apologized. Yes. He doesn't apologize for a faller. What's the term? He's an apologist, right? Like Plato's apology for Socrates. That means he's a defender.
Right.
He's a defender of what his father did. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That they carry that legacy. Not only Nazi Germany, but also the Israelis, the other colonizers. I mean, they stem from the white Europeans when they came here 534 years ago.
To get some Jews out of Europe and send them to Palestine. That's a fact. The Zionists have worked with them. And that's why a lot of the Jews in 5 happened to be Zionists later on, because they were complicit in the crimes of the Nazis. The other Jews who were the majority, who were non-Zionists or even anti-Zionists, they were taken out. It's not coincidental.
Mm-hmm. I have a video right here for y'all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's show you a little bit of American fascism right into our current lifetime right here.
People. We have implemented a vigorous new visa policy that will prevent foreign nationals from coming to the United States to foment hatred against our Jewish community. We are holding international organizations and nations accountable for rhetoric against Israel that resurfaces in the manifesto of monsters, like Iran and Sarah's killer. But we do see an eventual light at the end of this long tunnel of suffering. One can imagine a Middle East in which the Abraham Accords eventually reign. So thank you for the opportunity to address you.
And what an insult. Think about it. What an insult to Abraham, right? Because Abraham is the one prophet in the Bible that unites Muslims, Christians, and Jews. They all say they descend from his family. That's why they call him the Abrahamic faiths, because, Abrahamic faith. In Arabic, it would be Ibrahim, because Ibrahim's how you say but Abraham. But, literally, Abraham's body is buried in Hebron, which is crawling with, Zionist settlers, but it's still Palestinian territory. But isn't that a way to really corrupt Abraham's name? The guy that can really unite those people, they're using the Accords in his name to divide, to sell out the Palestinians, kind of like the Board of Peace, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's not only Zionist settlers, I want to say. We're seeing in the Garifuna communities that white settlers from the U.S. even are moving to Central America, and perhaps even backed by private mercenary groups such as Academy, formerly Blackwater. Eric Prince is a private mercenary.
One of the mercenaries they were going to go down and originally try to kidnap Maduro back in the day. I remember that. Yeah, they're based out of Florida. They're based out of Melbourne, Florida.
Yeah. And so this is a presence that we're seeing in the Garifuna community in Honduras. Thankfully, the Nicaraguan region is protected because of the Sandinista revolution. Because right now in Honduras, it's under the Palestinian descendant traitor, a U.S. puppet and Israeli ally now. So
I believe Bukele himself is half Palestinian. So a lot of these guys, they have an Arab background, but they've totally sold out their people, of course.
Yeah. Well, particularly on Nayib Bukele, his brother is the president of the Arab civic club they have there. They have a representation that they still want to show that they are of Arabic descent, Palestinian descent, but they're not in defending their true people's legacy and their history of martyrdom. But I do want to bring up about why there's why right now this is an important period with the U.S. imperialism. It's as they're already encroaching in Latin America. You can imagine that they've already have a majority. Just imagine in your head of the map of Abya Yala, the Americas. You only have Mexico, Brazil, Uruguay, the Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela left. But this is giving way for the pivot to the Pacific that originally came from Barack Obama's presidency. The time period of this transition to get to a staging position for war with the People's Republic of China. And now that is going to possibly come to fruition because the economies that the of Latin America are going to be shifting politically, militarily, economically to the U.S. and Israel. So this is very much a big concern, to dismantle the relations that they have with China. For example, Peru is a big trader with China. They of course have the port of Chancay that was created by the Chinese government. But now the U.S. Since 2025, they have full control of the lithium triangle in Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina, primarily. This is a whole colonial grab of the natural resources. Extraction.
Mori betrayed both her parents. She'll sell out anybody. Of course she'll sell out to the United States. So if the United States says grab a bone, don't do business with China anymore, she's gonna follow. And the Peruvian people need to rise up. The supporters of Roberto Sanchez, Pedro Castillo. Pedro Castillo, at a minimal, should be put in house arrest. If you have a scumbag like Bolsonaro, who's able to live in his mansion, Pedro Castillo has no mansion. He's a school teacher. But he should be able to go home to Cajamarca, to his family, and maybe stay on house arrest till things calm down. But they keep him, in prison for what? For trying to stand up for the Peruvian people so that there could be a new election, because the Congress was highly unpopular. This was a parliamentary coup, and he's still suffering consequences for it.
Well, we don't demand a lesser sentencing for Pedro Castillo as Peruvians, but we demand his total freedom and his restitution. The thing is that why he's still imprisoned is because they're punishing him as a representative of the poor masses, of the humble campesinos. And it's just like Evo Morales that they're trying to do with him, just like for Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores. The reason why Maduro and Flores are sentenced to, they're not sentenced, but they're going to be having the trial in June 2027, a whole another year.
No evidence.
Because
it's crazy,
essentially that they're forcing him to do a plea deal after all that suffering of isolation.
Man.
It's really just, this is how they function.
Yep.
So, the right wing always function as a punitive entity, and they punish and they slaughter and kill, just like the Palestinians.
It's medieval what they're doing. Yeah.
But yeah, so with this situation with the pivot to the Pacific, we're already seeing that with Iran, but we're going to see it with the DPRK, with China. The concern here is these governments
than ever, because Putin's starting to buy North Korean weapons, and that's what's happened for this prolonged war with Ukraine now. That Putin is in a stronger alliance with Kim Jong-un than ever. He's going to do new business with India as well. They're both part of BRICS. He's selling Russian oil to the East for much better deals he ever got with Europe or the West. It's completely backfired, the continuation of this war with Ukraine for Russia against the imperialist forces. The sanctions against Russia haven't hurt the economy, quite the opposite. So, this war can't continue on. We're seeing videos every day. I don't know if you've seen, Paolo, Jamar and I have been sharing of them forcing, young men to recruit them to the front, carrying them, their families. People's lives are destroyed in Ukraine. For what? For what? Just to gain more access to lithium in the former Eastern Ukrainian provinces? I don't know. I don't get the geopolitics behind this, because if anything, it's backfiring. It's doing blowback against the West. But it's just sheer stupidity and ideology that maintains it.
Well, yeah, it's an in for a penny, in for a pound situation that they're not going to give up, and they are trying to force Russia to surrender. And Russia is not in a position to surrender. They're in a better position than the U.S. Not in terms of economically, but militarily speaking. It's a bigger country, having larger capabilities, but also to have the backing, somewhat support from the DPRK and China, but and Iran. But the situation to the east is preparing itself to be a theater for war, with Japan prime minister allowing a change, a big political change of their country to allow it to have a military buildup, and no longer being a peaceful country.
They're even attacking
these are puppet
Belarus. They're
governments
trying to get
like South Korea.
Belarus into the war, and Belarus is the last Soviet economy. Belarus deserves all our support, and they're trying to drag Belarus into the war with Ukraine by Ukraine attacking Belarusians. It's insane. Or attacking civilians on the beach in Crimea, in Russian areas. Like, it's just terrorism. Zelensky. I don't understand how he can still be in power, but I don't think he's going to last much longer.
Yeah, but the other concern is that they have troops in Taiwan too.
One of the videos, yeah.
U.S. troops
in Taiwan, yeah. But yeah, he's just showing right there. This is a girlfriend trying to stop the recruiters from stealing him away. It's just so sad, so tragic, so heartbreaking.
In the translation, he says that he's 19. So every liberal that keep yelling that, it's 25 and up.
No, now they're grabbing kids.
Believing propaganda.
Now they're grabbing kids. It's terrible. And they're so corrupt. So the higher classes can bribe their way into not being recruited. They're going after the working class and the poor. They're the victims of this war right now. And a lot of them never wanted the war in the first place. The majority of the Ukrainians voted for Zelensky because he promised peace with Russia. The Ukrainians do not want this war. Zelensky is a complete traitor. Odessa
is landlocked now. I know we talked about how it could be possibly landlocked like 2 weeks ago. It's official that Odessa is now ran by the Russians.
It was started by the Tsarina Catherine. It was started by the Russians. Odessa was always Russia.
Right. And Kiev is also getting pummeled because there's no Patriot air defense missiles, even though News Weekly and other outlets have admitted a year ago, I believe, was when the report that Patriot defense missiles cannot even stop the hypersonic missiles that Russia was dishing out at them. So it doesn't even matter if they.
I believe Iran has those hypersonic missiles now that it's used against U.S. bases in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf. So there's been a lot of underestimation in general, right, of both the Ukrainian forces and the Russian. Yeah,
the Donbass will be liberated real soon. I know liberals hate when I use the term liberated, but that's exactly what Russia is.
That's what it is. They're being liberated from fascism. They continue to be Russians, speak their language, for God's sakes.
Well, what the president of Russia said, it's denazification from the very beginning. And still, I think still to this day, the white left still has a problem with that. And, I knew the Democratic Socialists, Social Democrats here in the U.S. Context that they were supporting the Ukrainian side. Why would you do that if their army force is a neo-Nazism? Representing Stefan Bandera. This is they're buying into the U.S. propaganda. Now, when it comes to Palestine, I don't think they would have been ready for that. Ukraine back then in 2022, that was a rude awakening for the political scene here in the U.S. But when it came to October 7th in 2023, that was even a much sharper, deeper political awakenings and political division, even from within the center and the left, and where now we're have to come to the conclusion that it's not only Benjamin Netanyahu, or not only Donald Trump, but the whole colonial system from the ground up, from the very beginning. So I want to also mention that we were involved in some actions throughout July when it came to the 250th anniversary of the U.S., also with the RIMPAC exercise. This is called the Rim of the Pacific military exercise. It's just one out of many that the U.S. is involved. It's a maritime exercise that takes place in occupied Hawaii, and they brought 30 countries led by the U.S. with Israel, Japan, and South Korea, Peru, Guatemala, Mexico, Chile, and Colombia. And this is just a few I'm mentioning, but 30 countries are participating in this occupied indigenous land. They were on the land, but also on the shore. They were sinking battleships too.
Hawaii belongs to the Polynesians. The U.S. needs to get out, just like it needs to get out of Puerto Rico.
Yep.
Yeah. And so this is why we're seeing these troops are getting ready for a whole new global war, another world war. If we're not even in one per se,
right.
But that's all the concerns that we're facing.
Economic third world war right now. What is it like? 60% of the entire third world are under sanctions by the United States now. Like the sanctions are just getting out of control, and that's all they are is economic. I mean, they're called economic coercive measures, but they're economic terrorism that targets a civilian population. You have unprecedented sanctions against Cuba that didn't come close to the quarantine. I mean, the quarantine under Kennedy was a joke when it was first started in comparison to the fuel shortages that are imposed on the Cuban people that are killing children, for God's sakes. These had the lower infant mortality rate in the United States. That statistic for the first time, in, I don't know, 50 years is changing now because of this tragic situation. But guess what? China got in and gave solar panels. I've always supported solar panels as an environmentalist. And now it's a good way to fight sanctions because those solar panels that they're finally installing now in Cuba
are self-sufficient.
Self-sufficient, saving lives. And also they're using natural gas to start generators. You're not supposed to do that, but they adapted because, they're very resourceful, the Cubans, these generators with natural gas, which is not gasoline, which is not diesel, but through their natural gas, the limited supply they have of that, they're able to start, TVs and bring in the children to watch TV sometimes and help their community because it's not an individualistic society. It's a communitarian social society for a long time, Cuba. So they're supporting each other with few resources. But thanks to those solar panels, it's saving lives. But for a while, people were dying in the hospitals, babies in incubators. I mean, it was so tragic. And this is advanced medicine, socialist society, and this imposition of these, inquisitorial methods. These are like medieval like methods that they're doing, the torture on the Cuban people. But they're still rising up. I mean, they said they were going to collapse within 2 months or whatever by March, and they just had the 26th of July anniversary from the attempt on the Moncada, Fidel Castro. It's like 1953. So it's like they said, they're not going to get to that. They're not going to be able to celebrate that. And the people were out, and all these things are doing is backfiring and making the people want to support the government even more, as it's been going on for decades. When is the empire going to learn? Right?
Yeah, and we got to go, unfortunately, out of time.
I was about to talk about my trip in New York. It's about Cuba.
If you can end with that, that'd be great. I want to hear about how your trip went in March.
Yeah.
Well, this is a part of the National Network on Cuba's event. It was a U.S.-Cuba normalization conference. So I got to meet some of the Cuban officials that work in New York. I'm talking about the permanent mission of Cuba, but also at the UN to represent their case. Why the blockade, the sanctions, and the threats by the U.S. military needs to drop entirely. So we had organizations to share about their efforts leading up to that. It was in March, so it was before the West America convoy, the style of the global Samud flotilla to Gaza, but for Cuba instead. And so some of the same actors were out there. I'm talking about political actors, not actual celebrities.
That was a successful flotilla. I like the one to Gaza. They actually got to Cuba. So that's great. Yes. We need to have more efforts like that.
Yes. I mean, there's trips happening right now in August where this Thursday, actually, August 13th, is the centenary, the Fidel Castro's 100th birthday.
Yeah, his 100th birthday would have been August this year. That's right, later this month. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's an important trip for people to go, but also to celebrate here in the diaspora, where he's an important figure. Cuba's Comandante Fidel Castro is an important figure, just like Comandante Hugo Chavez for revitalizing the Simon Bolivar's legacy, and Comandante Daniel Ortega, who's still the leader of these three revolutions still existing.
Inspired by Sandino, Martí, and Bolivar. Great liberators for their people.
Mariátegui, primarily, too.
Of course, Mariátegui in our native Peru. He was born in the same town as my grandfather.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Okay. You're on mute again, Jamal.
Well, I was going to say that's beautiful, really, and I can't wait until I get my chance to go to Cuba. Cuba is really in my heart and soul. It was my first awakening becoming socialist, learning about Cuba.
Paolo, you've been there, right? I was there once in 2017.
I have not. My trip was supposed to be in August, but we're having it as part of our Los Ronderos de Suarez first travels to Cuba. So our briefing comments have been there before, so they're going to take me around for the first time, but some other people too. in our
Well,
organizing
I hope
spaces.
we can get there sometime soon, comrade, because it is inspiring going to Cuba and seeing how resourceful the people are there.
Yes. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And
We
when we
appreciate
get you back on, we definitely going to have a longer talk because there's just so much to talk about. And I want to thank you so much for everything that you do, comrade, on the front lines for the revolution. Thank you so much.
But it just shows, right, that the fascists can't grab Evo Morales. It's showing the people are rising up there. I think it's a much more hopeful situation in Bolivia than in Peru right now. And let's hope that the social movements will continue. So they don't just rely on electoralism, or protests, but actual social movements for, the guerrilla strategy or whatever strategy they need to become successful. So thank you so much, Paolo, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paolo. And
thank you
everybody that's listening, I want y'all to have a really good night too. And have a good night, my brothers. Have a good night.
Blank period, yeah. I'm a black, brown, and indigenous. Gotta holler if you really feeling this. Gotta holler if you really real enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end.